remember the way we used to move, dance all night like young lovers do. Your heart is changing. Now we don't dance like we used to. Silent disco on the floor, baby. Mr. DJ, he'll get me through. When the beat's gone, you can't save me, baby. Smoke and mirrors, pretty lights. Another runaway city boy getting too high. But boys like you tell pretty lies. The 5 a.m. low in your eyes says your heart is changing.
This is Broad Radio. For you, by you. Broad Radio. Here for more.
Hello and welcome to Broad Radio. I'm Jo Stanley and my co-host today is the delightful Angela Pippos. Hi there, Ange.
Hi, Joe. How's your lockdown going?
I mean, what can you say? The headlines aren't fun.
They're not. And there is such a sameness to every day. You know, you get up, you brew tea, you set up mum's school, you pretend to teach, you try and do your own stuff, your own work, go for a bit of exercise, drink wine, watch something on TV, go to bed, get up, rinse and repeat. I mean,
yeah, I know. And now that we have no Olympics, are you in withdrawals?
Well, do you know, I was the one saying, I don't think it's a good idea to have the Olympics. And I have to eat my words. They were terrific. Tokyo did a wonderful job. And I also didn't think that something could take me away from the pandemic. I thought, that's impossible. This thing is so all-consuming. But again, the power of sport, it took me away.
Can't wait to chat with her and hear her dulcet tones back on the radio. Been a while. We're also going to be joined by cancer survivor and sexologist Tess Devèze on having pleasurable and sexually healthy lives while living with cancer, chronic disease or disability. Such an important conversation. And in just a moment, we're going to be joined by Kerri Sackville, who's also in lockdown in New South Wales. It'll be good to hear how she's getting through the lows and the highs of lockdown. She's got a few different perspectives there. That's all coming up after this. Broad Radio is proudly supported by Chemist Warehouse. Chemist Warehouse, great savings every day. Well, as we always do, a little bit of housekeeping at the top. If you are watching on YouTube, it would be awesome if you could like and subscribe. If you're watching on Facebook, give us a like or a follow. And it would be lovely if you'd like to comment along as we go in the show today. We love it when you join us with any of your thoughts or feelings about what we're talking about. You can catch up on our podcast with Broad Radio on the go, wherever you get your podcasts. And we love it when you join our More to Say poll. This is one question that we ask of our audience each week. And this week we're asking, well, it's reality TV season. Are you into it? I didn't ask you this, Ange. Are you into reality TV at all?
I like The Voice.
Oh, do you?
Yes, that's one that I can watch with our son Francis because he loves the stage and drama and singing and acting, as you know.
Yes.
So that's something that we can do together, which is nice. But generally not really into reality TV.
I can see Francis loving The Voice. It is right up his alley. Well, and I think the thing about reality TV is it brings you closer to your children because my daughter Willow, who's 12, we're obsessed with Survivor at the moment. And it's a really nice thing to sit together at the end of the day. We watched last night's episode, like we were a day behind so that we don't get as many ads on the catch up, you know. But it's, so I think, again, I don't want to be a curmudgeon about reality TV because sometimes we feel a little bit superior. And why?
And I also enjoyed Ninja Warrior as well.
Yes.
And the funniest thing was Francis said to Simon, Dad, do you think you could win Ninja Warrior? Like, not after 6 lockdowns, no.
That is so cute because little boys think their dads are superheroes. So of course he would say that. That's so sweet.
I didn't want to be rude, but no.
So if you enter our More to Say poll, you go in the running to win this beautiful Love Your Hands hamper with thanks to Saba Organics, one of the world's only 100% certified organic products. Now, another thing I wanted to mention is that the census is on tonight. I'm a bit of a purist. I like to fill it in on the night. I know that we're allowed to do it a bit earlier. We can go earlier these days. But I'm a real census nerd, Ange. I love filling in the census.
Same. Trends are so interesting, aren't they? I love to see the direction that the country's going in. But there are some questions that are missing that really should be on the census around sexuality. And that's, a reflection of our federal government. And it's sad,
it's just a dumb oversight, and it can't be an accident. It's deliberate that somehow they don't value people of a variety of backgrounds and different, so this is, we're alluding to the campaign Count Us In, and we would encourage you to head to the website equalityaustralia.org.au/count us in because, and I was looking forward to the census because I thought this is the first one after marriage equality. This is going to be really interesting to see our country reflected in a different way. But actually, once again, there are no questions accurately counting LGBTQI communities. It's not asking about sexual orientation or gender diversity or various variations of sex characteristics. Why would they not do that? It's deliberate, clearly.
And they considered it. It was, one of the topics up for discussion, and they landed on no. And that's not an accurate reflection of the society that we live in. And I can't help but feel that it's a reflection of the values running the country.
I think you might have landed on something there, Ange. I think you may well be. But I do like sitting down and filling in the unpaid labour part and the unpaid childcare part. And I like comparing it to what my husband might write and go, I'm not sure how accurate what you've said there. As I'm person one, I like electing myself person one to fill it in as well.
Yes.
I tend to maybe amp up my own involvement in the unpaid work in the house, and I like to make sure that my husband is as accurate as possible on that one.
And it's also interesting to see, trends like traditional marriage, will that continue to decline? Religion is another one.
Yes.
On the downward. And to see where I fit, where I fit in it all.
Yeah, very interesting. And it's a bit of distraction perhaps in and around lockdown. I'm going to read a comment from Sarah, who's made a comment on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. She says, I find it baffling that the census doesn't ask any sexual orientation questions at all, yet it asked me if my 16-year-old son has served in the militry. Oh, my God.
See, there you go. Skewed
and also out of touch. Just... who do they even understand who the community is?
Is there a question about who has won?
What have you got there?
Bright, shiny silver medal. Is that in the census?
That is a beautiful medal. Is that awarded to you by your beautiful boy, Francis?
Well, yes, it was. Quick story, though. We decided to give out medals in the house. It's just the three of us, Simon, myself and Francis. And this is the inaugural medal, and it was awarded on the weekend. And I assumed it would be my medal because I have done all of the home learning and I do my fair share of all the other stuff as well. And so when he was putting the medal together, he said, "Don't come in, Mum, it's a surprise." Again, feeding my assumption that I was going to win the medal.
Yes.
Then we sat down around the table and he gave the medal to his dad.
Oh.
And Simon stepped up and said, "Francis, your mum has done all of the home learning, 100% of it. You really should give it to Mum." So, yes, it's my medal, but I sort of got it by default in week one.
That hurts a little. It
does.
Really does hurt a little. It's a bit of a slap.
Something about the recognition of unpaid labour.
It really
There's none.
does. So you
Even
think
from an
there should be a question on the census? What medals have you received recently?
Yes.
I'm thinking there should be a question on the census. How many lockdown glasses of red wine have you consumed tonight?
Right.
I wonder. Well,
Yes.
let's ask our first guest, who is joining us from lockdown in Sydney. So she's quite a few weeks into the trauma that's going on up there, and we are thinking of people in New South Wales. Kerri Sackville, good morning.
Hello. I'm still reeling from the shock of you enjoying filling out a form.
Oh, really?
That is just my worst nightmare. I had to psych myself up. I did it last night. I needed a glass of gin. I just needed to do some deep breathing. I was very glad to get it done. So you guys, aliens to me.
How long did it take?
Too long. Way too long. And what freaked me out is, as a single parent, there's an anomaly in the survey that is really strange. So I was person 1, and then my son was person 2. And then it asked me for the third question for my daughter, is she the child of person 1 and person 2?
Oh, right.
Which I just didn't want to see. That was really strange. So yeah, there's a lot of problems with the survey, but we can move on to talk about Survivor if you want, because I'm certainly into that.
I'm obsessed with Survivor, but I haven't seen last night's episode. So I've been trying to avoid Twitter so that I don't know. Spoiler alert there. I have been enjoying your Twitter though, Kerri, because you have basically provided a lockdown bingo. So there's Haig's chocolate, there's zombie movies, there's not wearing a bra. I mean, you've really ticked every box of what lockdown is. Let's go to...
don't forget the most important one, buying an Oodie. That happened at about week 5, I think, and that was where I think I completely gave up any semblance of ever returning to normality. You just let go. You're like, right, I'm not going to be getting dressed again, except maybe for this morning, but I've got my pajamas on underneath. But we won't show those. And that was I think a good moment. It was like my acceptance of this situation. Stop fighting it, just get into your Oodie.
I feel like a bit of a lockdown flunky because I didn't do much online shopping, so there's no Oodie. But I certainly ticked the red wine box, with gusto. Yours is gin or tea. Mine is red wine or tea.
Yeah, but also the online shopping I think is really important. You need something to look forward to, and it's so much fun going out to the letterbox every day and seeing what's being delivered. Even if it's something like I bought nail polish, via an online chemist, just so I could see it come and be delivered. I could have walked down the street to the pharmacy, but it's much more fun to get a package. Every day there's something.
And also, we strangely started getting deliveries on a Saturday. So it was like, who's that? And then, it's just Amazon.
Yeah, but it's just another sign that the days are just merging into each other. We have no idea what day it is because there's no definition now between weekend and weekday, except that my daughter has online schooling, from Monday to Friday, which really is not as set in stone as one would hope, because half the time she's wandering out in her Oodie, at 11 a.m. I'm like, aren't you supposed to be in class? Oh, no, it's maths. It's like, how do I get her in there? What do I do? Forcibly pick her up? So, yes, it's all very challenging, but there actually is one upside, actually a couple of upsides. One is that my mother, who lives only a couple of streets away, has taken to baking as a form of therapy. And so that was another thing I had to buy. I had to buy a cake tray because we had so many cakes coming to us. I literally every couple of days, my mother turns up, outside the house with a plate of brownies or muffins or another cake. So we've got more cakes than we can possibly get through. And the other thing is, which I wrote about recently, is when you've got older children, as I do, I've got a 13-year-old and I've got a 20-year-old and a 22-year-old, having the older kids at home every night, not having to worry about, when they're coming home, waking up at 1 o'clock and not knowing, if they're lying in a ditch somewhere, is actually surprisingly reassuring. And I feel bad saying that, but it's quite relaxing. I can go to bed every night and go to sleep because my kids are safely in their beds.
I read your story, Kerri, and it just broke my heart because I'm not ready to reconcile the fact that, of course, my daughter who's 12, not too far distant future, will be places and I won't know where. And oh my God, Ange, did that just, to kick in the guts to imagine that you are fearful of your child's whereabouts every night. Oh my God.
I really enjoyed reading that piece as well. My son's only 8, so there's a little way to go before that. But it reminded me of my mum saying she could never sleep until the kids were home. Just hearing the keys go into the front door, we're like, okay, she can rest now. I'm home. But silver linings are important in lockdown. You know, that's a silver lining that I understand, and I know why you wrote that. In my case, it was, I guess, just getting every day to enter the mind of an 8-year-old with homeschooling. As annoying and as frustrating as it is, his imagination is wonderful, and he's so optimistic and he's so hopeful. So I was able to tap into that every day, and that was my silver lining.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. For me, I think the other silver lining is having my 3 kids and having, my son will move out, fairly soon. He finishes uni at the end of this year. And just to have this time with the 3 of them, all of us sitting together at the dining room table every single night, night after night, often with food that has been delivered to us because I'm tired of cooking. But I think that once this is over and the fear and the anxiety pass, I think there will be, certainly in my mind, a part of me that looks back and just remembers that time that we had together as a family. Because it's very rare when you've got kids, particularly with the age gap that mine are, to have so much quality family time. It's a little bit too much quality family time, but it's a lot of bonding. It's a lot of bonding. They play Monopoly together. I refuse to play Monopoly because board games are basically Satan's tool to torment us. But they're enjoying that. And that part is nice. The rest is not, but that part is nice.
I do know that you hate board games, and that I concur mostly on there. Have you learned something about your kids? I wonder if spending this much time with your children, whether you kind of have rediscovered parts of them that, particularly with your older ones, perhaps you hadn't really connected with.
They're very funny, and I probably shouldn't admit this, but there are times at night sitting around the dinner table where my son will start beating out just beating on the table, and then my younger daughter will start singing, and then my other daughter will start making some kind of noise, and I'll get into it with my hands, and we end up sort of having a family jam session, and none of us play musical instruments, so you can imagine the quality. But it's actually it's been lovely in that respect. I've also got a real sense, which I sort of knew, but I'm getting more of a sense of just how much they eat. When they're having all of their meals at home every day, oh my God. I mean, it's just endless. So no matter how much cake my mother brings over, it's gone. It's gone within a couple of days. And then actually my big girl sent my mum a picture of the empty cake platter saying, this needs to be filled. You need to do something about this.
Kerri, I've got friends in Sydney who have said that they feel like they can't complain about lockdown because the lockdown there hasn't been as long or as sort of arduous as the one that we've had in Victoria. Please tell me you don't feel like that. You should be able to express exactly how you feel about the whole thing.
That's a really good point. My best friend lives in Melbourne, and my family's originally from Melbourne, so my relatives are there as well. I had a cousin whose child was doing VCE in Melbourne last year during lockdown, which was really hard. And honestly, I don't think I really appreciated how terrible it was for Melburnians until we had this long lockdown. I knew that it was bad and I knew they were stuck at home, but what I didn't really appreciate till now was that sense of feeling completely out of control, of not knowing when it was going to end, of not knowing the outcome, and of feeling, I guess, uncertain whether our leaders are making the right decisions. And that was something I didn't really get until now. So whilst I guess I can complain about how hard it is, I also feel a bit guilty because I didn't really appreciate how difficult it is. And having friends who live in other states, as much as they're sympathising, you sort of still think, and Melburnians must have thought this about us in Sydney as well, they don't really get it. They don't really get it. You can't really get it until you've been in it and feel completely helpless. And especially, I think, when you're dealing with young people who need support, who need reassurance that it's going to be over. And of course, I keep telling my kids, it'll pass, life will get back to normal, but I don't know when. I don't know how. I don't know what it's going to look like. And I think that for me is probably the hardest.
Yeah, it's that ongoing having to recalibrate every day. Okay, there is this sense of terror because we don't know where it'll go, but let's bring us back to this day and try and find the silver lining and try and be positive and try to be the motivator in the household and try to get the kids back to the school desk. And that is ongoing and so exhausting, don't you think, Kerri?
It's so exhausting. And the other thing is, I need to stay buoyant in order to be there for my kids, in order to support them. When you've got 2 or 3 children, and there's that saying that you can only be as happy as your unhappiest child. And if any one of them are having a bad day, then I need to sort of summon up my resilience to be able to support them. And all 3 of my kids have had bad days at different times. So, there'll be days when everyone is doing well, and then there'll be days when one of them is like, I can't cope with this anymore, Mum, like this is really hard. Or I don't want to go to school, or I don't want to do my uni. And then that's very draining because you then have to, even though you've got your own fears and your own anxieties, you have to then pull it all together and be there for them. And it's tough. It's tough. I can also see I think you can see my bra in the corner of the shot. So for everybody watching,
I hope so. I
think I left my cupboard door open. So.
Well, well, it's obviously
this is keeping it real.
I was going to say it's hanging there, and you're not wearing it, which is very lockdown.
I know. See, I live my truth. This is all real. You can't see from below here.
No, that's right.
Fantastic. Hey, Kerri, do you watch the daily media conference, or have you said no to that for your own sanity?
Oh, I keep saying to myself, I'm not going to watch. And then every day I'm just drawn back to it. And it's so unhealthy and it's so frustrating. And there's never any good news. And in fact, my kids come out and say, what are the numbers today? What are the numbers? And they take bets on it. And we try to make it a bit fun, but it's very, very, it's toxic, I think. And it's probably something that we should all be keeping away from. But it's very hard to resist. It's like with the news every day. You know that the news is going to be upsetting, but it's very hard to say I'm going to stay away.
Do you feel the responsibility of, as someone on Twitter, that we all find really entertaining? I mean, you're quite a distraction, Kerri.
Do I feel a responsibility? Actually, yesterday I did, because yesterday my mammogram was postponed for, I think, the 3rd time. The breast screen in New South Wales shut down. Certainly the breast screen in my area in the eastern suburbs shut down at the beginning of lockdown, and my routine mammogram was cancelled 3 times in a row and postponed. And I actually took to Twitter to bring attention to that. And I felt really, really happy at that moment. And see, this is so good to be talking about breast screens when my bras are in the background. It's very apt. But I took to Twitter, and I was really happy to find that later on that day it was it made it into Sydney Morning Herald, it made it into news.com. I think it's appearing on a couple of other sites. So in that case, I felt, I do have a responsibility if I, see something that is a problem to be able to draw attention to it. In terms of amusing people, I just write funny things on Twitter to amuse myself, to make myself feel better. And if other people enjoy it too, that's great. But I need the distraction. I just need to vent somewhere. And humour is how I try and do it.
Mm.
Well, you should know that you are providing a civic duty, because you are helping the rest of us get through the sort of monotony and the challenges and the uncertainty of living in lockdown. So more of it, please.
Yes. Particularly as it feels like you're mirroring exactly my experience. I watched that zombie movie on the plane too. That's the dumbest film I've ever watched. Really? A zombie on the planes. Why? Why am I watching this?
And it was very badly dubbed. It's a German film, and literally the mouths are moving and the words come out like 5 minutes later. I still watched.
It was so full on too. I found it very traumatic. So, I mean, not that we're getting on a plane anytime soon, but it really it shifted my experience of flight, I must say.
Oh yeah, the scene, without any great spoilers, there's a scene with a chihuahua which is most unpleasant. No one should be eating dogs on a plane or anywhere.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, Kerri
Sackville,
Sackville,
off my list.
Yes, it's been lovely to chat with you. We are absolutely one in as a community around this country. I hate the infighting that's been going on, and I want us all to know that we're here together for each other. Everybody's experience is individual. It's not like when we say we're in it together, it's not like we're experiencing the same kind of hardships as our neighbours or vice versa. But we are very much sending our love to you and feel it also from you guys down here.
And same. And I have to say, my experience online has been almost entirely positive in that people from Sydney and Melbourne and other states are all supporting each other. We all want lockdown to be over for everybody. And I think most people just want everybody to be free and happy and free of COVID.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Thanks, Kerri. We'll speak to you again soon, and we'll see you on the Twitter.
Absolutely.
Okay. Take care. We'll have more Broad Radio after this. Well, I'm really thrilled to welcome to the show someone whose career I have followed, because we kind of have walked side by side in this crazy media business. She started out as a stand-up comic, very funny lady. She's amazing on breakfast radio about the time I was doing breakfast radio, and now she's become one of Australia's most successful podcasters with her true crime podcast. And she's written a bunch of amazing books, including her latest book, which is called CSI Told You Lies. Meshel Laurie, hi there.
Hello, thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, it's lovely to hear your voice, like a warm blanket. It's been a while since we've...
As is yours, my friend.
Oh, the radio voices. Hey, congratulations on your book. I don't like to summarise people's books with the author here, because I feel like it's like talking about someone when they're in the room. But you've written this book that speaks to the forensic pathologists, homicide detectives, defence barristers and victims' families of some of Australia's most well-known sort of events, really, the headlines that we were all fascinated by. Can you give us some insight as to what led you to write this book?
Well, I was invited to the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine, which we would think of as the mortuary and the coroner's court, a couple of years ago to help them with a web series. And I just fell in love with them, and I was talking about them all the time. And so friends said to me, you should write a book. And so I have. I mean, I just love them, and I wanted to share with everybody who they are and what they do, because we love forensics in fiction, but in reality, it's very challenging what they do, and we don't talk a lot about them, and they don't talk about themselves. They're very humble. And then in talking to them, then I found out about all the misinformation there is, in fiction about what they do, which is fine. I mean, there's misinformation about what we do, in fiction, which is fine, except that in their case, it creates real issues in the legal system, because when people like us are called up for jury duty, we expect them to be able to tell us things that they can't in a courtroom. And sometimes that causes problems, because jurors make up their own mind about forensic evidence, for example, because they think, I've seen heaps of CSI, I know what this means. Or sometimes they think that a pathologist giving evidence mustn't be very good at their job if they can't give the exact time of death, for example, or, all those things that we see in TV, they're not real. They can't really do that.
And is that what you call the CSI effect?
Well, I don't. Yeah, it is. I mean, I didn't make that up. That's a term that was coined in the States after a study that was conducted by a university there, where they found some crazy stats about the number of jurors who are affected by what they think is their knowledge of forensic science. It's unbelievable, and it has an effect in the legal system. I mean, that's sending people to jail or not. So it's very frustrating for these guys, because as it is, they have to go into a courtroom and oftentimes try and explain pretty complex biology to knuckleheads like us. But then on top of that, we think we know. So they kind of got to, talk us out of what we think we know, and then explain it to us. It's tricky.
So these incredible people that you've written about, the behind the scenes workers who are, as you describe it, they're speaking on behalf of the victims, basically. They're telling their stories. they witness such extraordinarily difficult things and very traumatic things. How do they go about their jobs and their days?
Well, they seem to all agree on one thing, although, I mean, they're all very different in the way they approach things, but they seem to sort of talk about breaking it down into sort of singular processes, not looking at the big picture too much. Certainly the homicide detectives talk about that, about looking at it piece by piece. It's probably not a good way of putting it, but you know what I mean. But sort of looking at it at one job at a time, one process at a time, trying not to get too caught up in the big picture, because that can be grueling and upsetting. So it's more about, as Roland Legg says, he's like maybe the longest serving homicide detective in Australia. He's retired now, but he says, my job in any moment might be just to try and work with the pathologist to figure out where a bullet went and then where it moved to and then where it exited. And don't get too caught up in all the other details, but just stick with that moment and that question and then move on to the next question. And so I think for pathologists, oftentimes it's a similar process. Is just, what's the puzzle? What's the job at hand right now? Just work through that puzzle and move on to the next one.
Meshel, I went straight to the chapter on David Hooks because David was a friend of mine. And
really?
It was hard.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good friend I knew him from Adelaide, and then he came here to Melbourne. So we had a similar journey at the similar time, I suppose. And he was a friend. And I had trouble reading the chapter because I was reliving it all. But what I did enjoy was meeting the forensic pathologist in the chapter and hearing about the crucial role that he played in bringing everyone together. And I didn't know that story. The only story I know has come from the cricket people, the people in the David Hooks who were out that night. But I really enjoyed hearing about his role.
I'm fascinated to hear, your perspective. Wow, because obviously I was not there. So I'm trying to piece together witness reports. And what's fascinating about that story too, there's a lot of fascinating things, but it's also a story about human memory and how fallible it is, and how for a very long time in criminal investigation, people thought or accepted that eyewitnesses are the ultimate evidence. But now we understand that memory is not perfect. And so in that situation, there were so many eyewitnesses to that event, and not each of them, but a lot of them told slightly different stories and had different memories, because it was such a traumatic event to see a man punched and knocked out really before he hit the ground, and then, to hit the ground so hard. And it was just such a horrible thing to see. And when they came to talk to police, a lot of people had slightly different stories, and it's really interesting. So, I'm really fascinated to hear what you thought about that. Gosh. Because that was one of the chapters that I was not able to work with his family or friends on. So all the other chapters I worked with family and people who were there. So, wow. How'd it feel?
There's still, among his close friends, still a lot of anger about the way that case played out. But I guess if I'm looking for a positive, attitudes have changed about the one punch since then, and how it can lead to manslaughter. And I guess that's a conversation that we needed to have as a society, and that case moved it forward a bit.
And Jo, the significance of the post-mortem in that case, of course, is that, Charlie Bazina, the investigator, was able to negotiate a situation because, David Hooks was very, very vocal apparently through his whole life about the fact that he wanted his organs donated after death. And his wife, he wasn't with his wife at the time, but she said, listen, I've got to respect his wishes. I have to make that happen. And Charlie was saying, look, I get that, but I promise you, down the track, 12 months or whatever, when this comes to trial, you're going to be equally passionate about wanting justice for David that's going to be really important to you as well. So we have to get this post-mortem right. We've only got one chance. So Charlie had to negotiate how we're going to do this, how we're going to serve both purposes here. And he was able to get the situation together where the post-mortem happened, the investigation happened at the same time as the organ retrieval. It's pretty special and amazing. And yes, the investigator, the pathologist came into the hospital to do that. So it's a really important story. Unfortunately, they were not able to get that manslaughter conviction. And Charlie is still spewing about that in the way that detectives never get over those those losses, because that would have been historical. But it happened not too long afterwards that became a crime, the one punch crime. Amazing.
Meshel, the stories that you do bring are, as I said, the headlines that we all remember. It's everything from David Hooks to, there's a bit of Kath Folbig in there, there's the Boxing Day tsunami, there's the horror that is Peter Dupas. I mean, there's so much in there that we all remember. And particularly I connected with the story, the chapter about the Maslin children who were killed in the MH17 crash, and your access and an incredible care that you bring to the story of their parents, Rin and Maz. How do you go about broaching a conversation with the families of the victims that you're writing about?
Well, in their case, they have a foundation, so I contacted them through the foundation. So that's always helpful when there's a third party that I can contact first to sort of gauge through a close friend or relative how they think it will go. So I'm not cold calling people. So I can go to another person and say, hi, this is me, this is what I'm doing. I'd like to contact them, what do you think? And could you pass my details on to them? So I'm giving them the agency to contact me, basically. And they came back, and I knew that the Maslins have a lot that they want to say. They have a real kind of agenda, a really positive agenda. There are things they want to talk about. So, we Zoomed a lot because they're in Perth. And so we talked a lot before we started, but the three of us really wrote that chapter together. So it was stressful to send them stuff to read. It was very stressful because they would sit on it for a while, months, and waiting for them to send it back was really hard, but worth it.
When I started out, Meshel, as a cadet journalist, I had to do the court round, and I did it for a month or so, and I knew that it just wasn't for me. I would get back in the crew car and cry. I really found it hard to control my own emotions because it's just, you're hearing such devastating news day after day. I just would like to know how you protect yourself from that. How have you stopped yourself from falling into that pit of despair, because so much of it is obviously harrowing?
Well, I just have a constitution for it, I guess. I think you either do or you don't, and I do go to counselling anyway, and I think that's, I was advised to go to counselling in good times and bad times, so that it's like a mechanism that's set up anyway. And also I'm Buddhist, and that helps me. That's always helped me in good times and bad as well. And I think that is something that I have, that I can just sit with things. I can sit with people when they cry or when they're angry, or I can sit with emotion. I can sit with other people's emotion, put it that way. And so for whatever reason, I can do that, and that helps.
Well, I do wonder, and I really encourage people to go out and get the book because it is amazing. I will agree with Ange, I found it really hard to read because I'm not someone that I don't dive into true crime very often, but it is so incredibly well researched and beautifully written, and so do get the book. And it is, Meshel, it's like a beautiful homage to all of those very, very sad situations with those people who lost their lives in such tragic circumstances and their families. You know, it's a really beautiful telling of how we've kept, diving for the truth, I suppose. And I wonder, because you started out in comedy and Meshel, here you are doing true crime, have you found a new purpose, a different kind of purpose for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. But, I think comedy, they're kind of similar, really. I mean, comedy, as you know, is about, you're making people happy. I think you have to kind of like people to do comedy. I think we pretend we don't sometimes, but, you have to, you'd have to like people and enjoy making them happy. And, so there is a lot of that about what I do, to meet these people who have been so devastated and had just the worst thing happen to them. And I know I'm comforting them in, and that's really, I enjoy that. I enjoy being able to sit with them in a way that a lot of other people can't. And they tell me a lot of times about that thing of seeing an old friend in the street and seeing them cross the street to avoid them. Like they live that. So, because a lot of people can't sit with them. So I'm very happy to be able to do that for them. I think the least I can do is sit still.
Oh, that's amazing. I think it's extraordinary that you do.
Yeah.
So thanks, Meshel. It's been lovely to have you on the show.
Thank
and
you.
I really love the book. I think it's extraordinary. So do head out CSI Told You Lies. And I hope that we hear your dulcet tones on the radio again soon, sometime too, maybe.
I don't think so.
No. That'd be a no.
Come back and visit us, though.
Well, that's right.
Yes, I would love to do that, yes.
I mean, this is where Broad Radio kind of emerged from that whole situation for myself as well, Meshel. I think
this is nice.
We'll have to have a beer over that one time.
Yeah, I would love to. Both of you, please.
Thanks, Meshel. It's been lovely to have you on Broad Radio. You take care. We'll have more Broad Radio after this. Well, at Broad Radio, we are growing because of the incredible support of the organisations that joined us right from the beginning. And so we say thank you to Saba Organics, who have been supporting us for some time now. Saba Organics are one of the world's only 100% certified organic range of skin and body care. Whether it is hand wash or hand sanitizer or cleaning products for our home, whatever it might be, we don't want to be covering our skin in toxins or chemicals. And the fact is, even when something is described as a natural ingredient, those ingredients may have been exposed to herbicides and pesticides in farming, which are toxic, damaging to the earth, and not great for our bodies either. So Saba Organics, being 100% certified organic, guarantees no aluminium, no sulfate or parabens, and no toxic chemicals. I really love the Saba Organics lemon tea tree and kunzia hand wash, but you can check out their whole range at sabaorganics.com.
Australians know that sun exposure can cause skin cancer, but dermatologists also know that it can cause wrinkles, pigmentation and age spots. That's why you need sunscreen every day. Ask your Chemist Warehouse pharmacist which sunscreen is right for your skin.
Broad Radio, talking inspo we love, info we need, and sharing more of us. Watch and listen live every Tuesday 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time at broadradio.com.au or find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and LinkedIn at Broad Radio Oz. Talk to us live. Call on 1300 8 Broad. Catch up on demand anytime, anywhere, every time, everywhere. On the train, we'll be here. 2 a.m. existential crisis? We've got you covered. Broad Radio. Here for more.
And a couple of comments on the social media that I wanted to share. One from Pip on Facebook, who says, I've loved seeing how our kids during lockdown engage with their friends online. Friendship exchange you don't witness. Isn't that lovely? I hear my daughter... I hear her giggle to herself when she's connecting with her friends virtually. It's really sweet.
I love the morning Zoom, but some of the questions, I mean, that's where Francis dropped the news that his parents were not married.
Oh, Awkward.
On the morning Zoom call.
Awkward, yes, very awkward. And then I say thank you to Donna also on Facebook, who says, what a great episode, ladies, and so happy to see Meshel kicking goals. And I do agree, because she is truly brilliant. So that's a ripper. Do keep your comments coming. It's great to see it. Well, now we know that Breast Cancer Network Australia is an absolutely critical support network for people living with breast cancer. And this Thursday at 6 p.m, they are running a free virtual conference on sexual health and well-being. More than 20,000 Australian women are diagnosed with breast cancer every year, and treatment for breast cancer results in 80% of them having their sexual health affected, and they usually suffer in silence. Not anymore. That's what Broad Radio is here for, and the Breast Cancer Network Australia as well. One of the panellists on the virtual conference on Thursday is occupational therapist, sexologist and cancer survivor Tess Devèze, who joins us now. Hi there, Tess.
Good morning. Hello on this. I almost forgot what day it is. That's really depressing. Lockdown day.
Yeah, it's a lockdown day. It's a lockdown day. That's all it is.
Thanks for having me.
Tess, can you tell us what kind of an effect cancer treatment has on our sexual health?
How long do I have? It depends on the cancer. It depends on the treatment. And also our bodies respond differently to treatments. It's just endless. I think the work that I do with people, I do a lot of work around sexual dysfunction. So perhaps with prostate cancer, changes in erection. I have breast cancer. I do a lot of work with breast cancer, things like libido, changes in our arousal responses. Where did my orgasm go? Dry vagina, 2 words. The endless struggles we have with vaginal atrophy and vulvar atrophy. That's the most common one I deal with. I think, so I was going to say, so you said before, so many people suffer in silence, and I am a sex therapist and I have cancer and I suffered in silence, and I'm the one with the training. So it really opened my eyes to see how many people would not have the guts to ask these questions. How many people, because I did it to myself. I sat there thinking, okay, I have so much pain in my vulva area, in my vagina. I can't walk. I couldn't wear pants. I couldn't sit down. And then I just got to breaking point and I rang my breast care nurse and she just says to me, oh yeah, we can totally help you with that. It's like, oh my God, why didn't I ask this sooner? And it's because there's such a lack of support out there, hence my job.
There is no bigger expert in her field than you. You will know all the answers to these really difficult questions, and I guess there's a lot of taboo around talking about dry vagina and these things. It must feel, though, for many cancer patients, sort of something that's hard to get over. It's almost insurmountable for them because they're going through a lot. How do you help them get that better, stronger sense of themselves to tackle these challenges?
It's heartbreaking, the amount of people that I come across who do think that it's because of them, that they are the ones that are having these struggles because there's something wrong with them. But it's actually completely normal to have suffering sexuality from treatments, because look at what's happening to our body. We're being poisoned, we're having body parts removed, we're having the most stressful experiences of our life. To have impacted sexuality is a very normal reaction to cancer treatments, just like every other aspect of our lives get affected. And I think one of the biggest things that I really help people realize is that you're not broken and you can fix this. I think it's hard in sex. I'm so happy I can say vagina on this show. Vagina, vagina, vagina. Because everywhere else, you have to speak in code. I'm not going to bring up that milkshake thing that happened on that TV.
Oh, that was a disaster, yes.
Just absolutely awful. But even just being able to talk about it is a huge barrier because I get censored on social media platforms, and it's just so hard to reach people. And after my active treatments, I'm on endocrine treatments right now, so you'll see me shuffle in my seat because I have dry vagina. It's this thing of, okay, your treatments are over, off you go. That's your new normal. And our new normal is quite often absolutely horrible. And I just really want to just tell people that your new normal can be better. Like, you can create a better normal. And that's where things like I work in sensitive reintegration. You know, when we lose erogenous zones, okay, so you no longer have your breast or your nipples. That's okay. Let's work on creating new erogenous zones. You can still have an orgasm, but maybe it's going to be a little bit different, and we can explore how you can do that through these ideas. We're going to work on libido, communication with your partner, how to navigate dating. Sex is just one part of sexuality. Sexuality is a huge part of our lives. It's our connection to ourselves, our sense of self-worth. It's arousal, pleasure, confidence, relationships, connection, affection. Oh my goodness, I'm starting to ramble so much. I get so excited about this. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. I absolutely love it too, because what you're saying, Tess, and I think this is sometimes why we don't ever feel like we can ask questions about whether we are, you know, not feeling like we're functioning well in our intimate relationships, because we don't think that a sexually healthy relationship is important. We don't value it as a part of our overall health, because it's not ever given that kind of, you know, a space in the conversation around general health.
We live in such a sex negative culture. And by sex negative, I mean it's behind closed doors and it's something to be embarrassed about. Funnily enough, sex sells, but not an accurate representation of what sex is. But we're raised to think it's embarrassing. You know, we're told don't self-pleasure, don't have too many partners. It's just this sexual shaming constantly throughout our lives. So especially with things like cancer, where it's so many people say to me, I just felt bad because I should be so grateful to be alive. Like, yeah, there's a difference between surviving and living. We want to live. We don't just want to survive. And part of living is healthy connections to the people around us and ourselves. And again, this just comes down to that theme of people are so scared to ask and people don't know who to ask. And for anyone listening, your oncologist can answer your questions. Just need to ask. Chemo nurse can answer. If you find an OT, that's our job. We can answer your questions. But we have to advocate for ourselves, because the system is just flat out. And I don't want to speak poorly of our healthcare professionals. I'm alive because of my treating team, but they are so busy. So I guess in a way it kind of makes sense that something that's considered non-acute could take a back seat. And so I guess that's why I'm floating around in the background now to be like, I can help you, let me help you. And Breast Cancer Network Australia with this conference on Thursday, it's going to be amazing. Yeah.
You mentioned the sex sells message. How much does that make it difficult for you to do your job? Because that is pushing one particular type of sexuality, one particular type of femininity, masculinity. We only see one version of it when it is, you know, up there in the headlights. How do you unpack that and say, you know what, there's more to the sexuality than that one that the advertisers are pushing?
It's very tricky. It is actually a huge barrier to people's sexual recovery. There's this idea that we need to have, well, firstly, in most media, it's a representation of a male presenting person with a female presenting person, and they have one type of sex, which is the penetrative type of sex. And with cancer treatments, our bodies change day to day. We have pain, we have vulva atrophy. So penetration, even with lubricant, it hurts and it's very, very painful. And people don't realize that there are so many other options. And I have a lot of clients that I support in America, and even just to bring up, you could use a sexual toy. I call it an intimacy aid. You know, you can't use the word sex, you have to use the word intimacy. Even things like that is like, oh, no, we can't do that. So how about mutual masturbation? How about you play a game where you leave your underwear on and you just touch each other? Put a timer on, 5 minutes each, and just get used to touching each other again. Oh no, we can't do that. I'm like, oh, but you can't have penetration because it hurts. So it's very, very difficult. And it just comes down to, I work so slowly with people, and everyone has a different version of what sex is to them. Sex is an endless term. So it's about, what does sex mean to you? How do you experience pleasure? Where's your Goldilocks zone right now? Where would you like to get to? And let's find some really achievable ways to get there. And I think vulvar atrophy and vaginal atrophy is so common, and it's not just cancer specific, it's also perimenopause and menopause. And there are so many ways that we can help improve how we are and how we're feeling. You just get an internal moisturizer on the chemist shelf. If you have cancer, chat to your treating team, because if you're hormone receptive like I am, I can't use some moisturizers. But there are ways. And if it doesn't feel right, it's probably because it is. You're the expert on your body. So it's that thing again of, if you don't feel right in yourself, please ask. Just everyone, please ask. I just need everyone to speak up, because we're not the experts on you. We are the experts on ourselves. And so we have to ask. And it's such a shame. And I try so hard to advocate for the sexuality banner in hospitals. I think I think the busyness is the factor that gets in the way.
Well, and also, Tess, I think the sense that we are alone, when you think about it, if you were to gather all the different groups of, say, people living with cancer, people living with chronic illness, people living with disabilities, people living with mental health issues, which also impacts your sense of sexual health and intimacy and an ability to be aroused and all those things, if we were to gather just those 4 groups, that's a huge part of Australia's adult population. So we feel like we're struggling alone, when in actual fact, potentially, we could be a majority if we're struggling with our intimacy.
And imagine if we, in the mainstream media or even the census, we were raised to experience sexuality as a part of our lives. It's just a part of our lives. Doesn't mean that we're obsessed with sex or we have any addictions. It just means that we enjoy pleasure and intimacy, as well as maybe the footy, and it's just this thing where we're told that it's, it's going to take over our lives and there's something wrong with us and it has to be this way and you have to look this way and you have to respond this way in pleasure, and it's an absolute nightmare. And disability, mental health, people with hormone replacement therapies, cancer, you name it. If we could just acknowledge that it exists even, and it can be just a natural part of humans' existence, that in itself would just make things so much easier for people. And I get so ranty again. I'm so sorry.
It's all about removing shame, isn't it? And just allowing people to really enjoy who they are, whatever that means.
The shame is huge. I was in the chemo chair screaming at the nurse walking off, "What about my labia ulcers?" And just no shame. All these heads are turning to me, and then I could see, someone just beckoned a nurse over, and I'm like, yes, all you need to do is ask. Just like trying to role model, like, it's okay, and all the nurses have the answers, but we just had to speak up. And the shame is huge. What a useless emotion. Shame is just useless.
It really is. It is. Well, I want to encourage people to head along to the website that's going to be on the screen in just a moment. Ro's going to get that up. If you're interested in being a part of this virtual conference on Thursday night at 6 p.m, there's the helpline for BCNA, 1800 500 258. And the website to go head along to is bcna.org.au webcasts. And you'll be able to find exactly how to link in with that conference. It is free and they would love you to head along. Also, you can find Tess at connectabletherapies.com. She sounds like someone who's got a lot of help for you if you need it.
Yeah, it is my life's mission now. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an important topic. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, thank you so much, Tess. It's been awesome to have you and to have this very frank conversation. It's what we're here for. And Ange, we've covered a lot today on the show.
How good was Tess?
They are amazing, and I'm very, very inspired. Very, very inspired to ask the question and not be consumed with shame. I'm the product of a very conservative upbringing, and it's hard to get rid of that, isn't it?
Yes, it does. It does hang around. It hangs around. But her enthusiasm was just jumping off the screen. You know, it's not just the knowledge, but it's the hope that she offers. And this conference is going to be great for that, to dispel myths, to get people together, to be able to ask anything. No topic off limits. I mean, it's just such a worthwhile thing, isn't it? I mean, it's fantastic.
Yes, we had some comments on YouTube. The Art of the Hookup say, spot on. Re-getting healthcare advice for our sex lives unless we bring it up, our medical professionals generally don't, which is true. They don't ask that question. And I hear what Tess says, that they don't have time, but at the same time, being an advocate can be hard. Breast cancer survivors need greater gynecological health knowledge too, thanks to Kath there, who has shared that comment. And just before we go, I wanted to share a photo that the amazing Chloe Mcardle, who we have had here on Broad Radio earlier this year, marathon swimmer Chloe, who is going for the world record of crossing the English Channel. She's just hit 40. Okay. So she's crossed now 40 in total, and by the end of September, she will have completed her 44th channel crossing to create the new world record. And you can see the sign that she's holding up there. She's doing this in honour of victim survivors of domestic violence, and she herself is a victim survivor, particularly very courageously speaking about coercive control. So what a woman Chloe Mcardle is.
She is fabulous, and as inspired as I am by the Olympics, I will never be crossing the channel without a boat.
I like to go under it on the train, the super fast train.
Just open water swimming is one of my greatest fears because of creatures, things underneath that, you know, I just would never ever do that. It's not on my list. But she is courageous, not just for swimming and crossing the channel that many times. It's the messages as well. She's a wonderful advocate for a fair and safe society, and we love her for that, and we love her voice.
Yes, she's amazing. You know, though, she says that the greatest critter that you have to face is the voice in your head when you're doing the English Channel.
That's all very well for her to say that. I'm worried about creatures, actual tangible creatures underneath, and
true.
Like you, I'm not a big fan of the water, really.
No. She can have it. Anyway, we can't wait. We're hopefully going to hook in with her in September, either just before or just after she sets that world record, because what an extraordinary achievement. Meanwhile, Ange, all the best with the rest of lockdown as it continues.
And you too. We're about 2 kilometres apart, aren't we?
Yes.
Wave.
I know. I throw things over the fence for you. Next time it'll be a bottle of wine. But
it'd be nice to see you face to face very soon.
I know, darling. You take care, and we'll have more Broad Radio next Tuesday. We'll see you then.